Once a DJ is brought to you with the support of Vinyl Underground Record Store. Since 1993, VU's been shipping new and used underground house, techno, disco, hip-hop, soul and more worldwide from Northampton in the UK. They're your go-to store for upfront releases, repressed classics and deep digging for undiscovered gems, and they're a great crew to deal with who really care about the music and their customers. To show their support to the Once a DJ community, they're giving you 10% off your next order. Just head to vinylunderground.co.uk and use the code ONCEADJ10 at checkout, and you'll also get free UK delivery on all orders over £100. That's ONCEADJ10 at vinylunderground.co.uk.
Nice.
Before we get back to the show, I just wanted to tell you that outside of this podcast, I run a business called Remote Control. That's remote-ctrl.co.uk, and basically it's where I get to do what I love: audio and video production, design management, all of that sort of creative stuff. And the nice thing is, I don't do it alone. Over the years, especially through DJing, I've met some seriously talented people, from producers to designers to videographers and more, and we've built this little network where we can pretty much take on any creative project. So whether you need a podcast edited or a video produced or branding work or whatever, we've got you covered. It's honestly been one of the most rewarding things I've done, working with people I actually respect and enjoy collaborating with. So if you've got a project in mind or you're just curious about what we do, head to remote-ctrl.co.uk and let's chat. No pressure, just good creative work.
That was nice.
Welcome back to Once a DJ, everyone, the podcast that looks at what brings us together and what sets us apart. As a DJ, I think there's probably a lot of us where we go out and DJ and we're somewhere where we're just trying to feel out the crowd, and you'll have a few different sort of litmus test songs, where you can kind of gauge this crowd's up for it or they're just not. And I'm delighted to have today one part of the group that brought out one of those litmus test tunes, DJ Super Dmitry from Dee-Lite. How are you doing today, sir?
Thank you very much. I'm doing very well. I'm sitting here in my studio and looking forward to our chat. Great stuff. And just to correct on that, of Dee-Lite and Nauti Siren and a bunch of other work as well, which we're going to get into. So what I just tend to start the show with really is looking at sort of where you grew up really and what your earliest sort of musical connections are and where the passion for music came from.
Well, I must say, first of all, I'm third generation musician. So, my mom is a pianist. My grandma, unfortunately, she was very music able, but there was the small little things like the Russian Revolution, then the Civil War, and then World War II, so there was a couple of snags along the way with her continuing her music education. What she did is, to remember her piano, she cut out all the keys from paper and laid them out so she could practice. She could, she couldn't hear herself, of course, but she could practice. But she made sure that her daughter had the opportunity to study music. And my mom went to a conservatory and, got her music degree and then was teaching at home. And she was my first teacher. Her taste runs towards classical pretty much. And she kind of snubs her nose at anything that's not exactly. She's no longer with us, but bless her heart. But in any case, so she started me out on, teaching me, but that didn't go very well. We fought quite a lot. And then she, at the tender age of 5, she couldn't take it anymore. And she gave me to a teacher, a music teacher. It was a little old lady, Oksana, and Oksana straightened my ass right out. She wasn't, she wouldn't suffer fools at all. And so she was a harsh teacher, but she got me good. And then at the age of 7, I started going to music school. And that was a kind of a cool thing in the Soviet Union, so it's a very different time frame we're talking about. It was within a conservatory for adults. There was a music school where the students of the conservatory were the teachers of the music school. So we were taught by quite young people, 19, 20 students, and they were into, Western music, and they were into rock mostly, but that was the time.
And this was Kiev, wasn't it?
Well, it was Ukraine. No, it's not Kiev. Now it's called Kropivnitsky. Then it was called Kirovograd after the great hero of the Soviet Revolution. But they decided that they didn't really want to remember the great hero of the Soviet Revolution after all, and then they renamed it back to its old name. However, so the students were into, Western music, and we studied funny things. We studied like some Deep Purple tracks. We studied some, one thing we studied was the, Jesus Christ Superstar, the opera.
Right.
Yeah, okay, Andrew Lloyd Webber. Anyway, so we studied because it was a good example of Western decadence and like religion, all the things that were wrong with the West, so there was all there. Wow. Yeah, it's kind of funny that it was used in a very propaganda context,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about, like, was there a lot of control over what Western music you had access to?
Yes, pretty much. I mean, the Western music, really, you were, you could only get really on the black market. Now, as a kid, I was already very involved with going to. It was a private gathering where you would have to hear it, to be announced, through your friends and and so forth. So the authorities didn't know about it, so you would go there, and it'd just be a bunch of people selling different Western things, everything from jeans to vinyl to stamps to whatever. I don't know so much about the shady side of the black market in the Soviet Union. I was a kid, but in any case, so you would try to save all your money, and then go to one black market and buy a record, because each record was like $50, so you really had to that much. So it was, what you would do is then you would bring it home, and then you would record it on reel to reel for yourself, and then you make copies for your friends, and then you'd sell it right back and trade it for something else. So that was the deal. But the funny thing, I was going to finish about my story about the music school and studying Jesus Christ Superstar. In Jesus Christ Superstar is pretty much, all this kind of showy, rocky, feel. But then, there's this one track called What's the Buzz? And it's kind of a really funky bass line and keyboards and, and I thought, wow, that sounds cool. I didn't know really, I couldn't understand the lyrics so well, but the groove was super funky. I was like, wow, I want to do music like that. And I didn't know black music. I mean, we had Boney M. That was pretty much the end of it, as far as like.
I think that was produced by a white guy anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah, Frank Farian. Yeah. But in any case, it was the girl's voice was cool though. She was the cool one. Yeah, the rest of them, I'm not sure. There's a lot of clouding around with that, but and not being on the record, but being the visual, it's kind of set the standard for all the subsequent like in our time on Black Box and people, just taking other people's vocals and pretending to be them. That.
Well, it was Frank, wasn't it Frank that did Milli Vanilli as well?
He certainly did.
Yeah.
So he had a long tradition of that. But in any case, so I was really into the sound. I didn't know it was called funk. But I was like, okay, well, this is, and I started writing songs at around maybe the age of 7, 8. I started writing my first songs. And they were, I also loved like Gershwin and the Gershwin brothers. So that was a big early influence. Scott Joplin, that was another influence. So I started writing something in the style of, I thought, of course, they were very simple in comparison to the Gershwin and the Scott Joplins. But in any case, that was my earliest influences. Then I came to, at the age of 14, I and my family left the Soviet Union, still was the Soviet Union at the time. We immigrated, which was also, fairly traumatic experience, because we were the first in our town to leave our glorious fatherland, motherland, whatever you want to call it. And so we were kind of looked on as traitors, that we were abandoning, our motherland, and it treated accordingly,
Was it easy to leave?
No, you had to. It was a really difficult thing where you had to have relatives abroad that would send you an invitation. Then you would put that invitation to, the passport agency. You would give it to them, and then immediately you would be fired from your job, right? Whatever. So, and then you would have to wait for about maybe a year, maybe longer for the visa to come through.
Oh, God.
If it would come through, and so during this time you had to live on your savings and you were kind of ostracized, so no, it was not an easy thing. And for a kid, but I knew I wanted to leave. So there was no, I would endure everything. I'm leaving, screw that. I'm leaving anyway. So I'll just endure whatever insults you throw at me.
Did you feel like you had to leave and go because you wanted to discover more of the music?
Well, the music is definitely the world. I mean, really, I was very, very much into geography and history and all the things that literature, things that the world had to offer, and I didn't care to be censored. I mean, inside the Soviet Union, the only official records were released by one label, Melodia. That was the one label.
Yeah.
And they released a couple of Beatles 7 inches. They released a couple of Stones 7 inches. ABBA, Demonium, this kind of thing. But that was as far as they went. That was it, really. So. I wanted to hear more clearly, and I was really interested in being part of the world culture, and I felt very stifling to be in a little town in the tightly controlled media, which. It was. We knew, there was just propaganda being thrown at us all day, and not that the West doesn't have its own propaganda, which is thrown at us every bit as much. It's just more subtle. That's all it is. It's not as overt. But in any case, there is freedom of press, sort of, and freedom of speech, sort of, and and the music, it doesn't seem to be repressed. Although economically speaking, it can also be like that, especially previously when going into the studio was a very expensive business. So you needed to be funded by somebody or rich to be able to go to the studio to record a decent demo. But now we're not limited by that anymore. So it's a beautiful thing. However, it also the other thing was prohibitive, but it also separated a bit weeded down people that had no talent and no business trying to do stuff officially to a much more democratic thing. However, we have to weed through endless the millions of compositions now to get something that you really love. So,
yeah.
So
was there any of the locally released music? Was it Megaphone? Did you say the label?
Melodia.
Melodia. Sorry. Yeah. Was there anything on that label that was released that was from the Soviet Union that you got quite into? Because I've heard that there's a few bands that I've heard that are, say, from like the Czech Republic or Hungary or places that are really funky of that era. There was one I discovered the other day. I think they're called like Studio B or something like that.
No, I'm not familiar with that. I mean, I left, I was 14, not even 13. Yeah, so, but during my time, there was this composer Tukhmanov who was considered really hip at the time in the Soviet musician circles. And there was a group from Belarus called Pesnyary that was also kind of edgy. They had these really cool Eastern harmonies with their voices, and it was rock, but with these really cool harmonic vocals, So I kind of quite like that. Although I haven't heard their stuff in 30 years or so, but. But I enjoyed that at the time. It was experimental and interesting. Of course, then once I left and my family moved first to Austria and then to Italy, I got into punk. It was 1978, and that was the Pistols and the Damned, and X-ray Specs. I mean, the list goes on. And Wire. A lot of things started happening around that time. Buzzcocks. There was a huge explosion, and in the States too. I mean, there was the Stooges. They were the originators anyway, and there was a. Lifetime fan of Iggy Pop, so, just went recently to see him in concert. Just as great. I've seen him maybe 6 or 7 times. Amazing individual, amazing performer. Love him. So anyway, and then, I got introduced to Bowie, and then I got introduced to, all kinds of music. Then I moved to the United States. This was like 1978. 79, and there, I started getting into some new wave things, and pre-new wave things like Magazine, for instance. There's a lot of Brit music actually, but at that time. And so then eventually in 1978, my family moved to New York. I was the only child, so it's me and my parents and my grandparents. So it was 3 generations of my family. And there I started to go to school, and there was other people more into rock though. But there was back in the day there was 50-cent bins, in a lot of record shops.
Yeah.
So you'd go there and it was a cutout thing, on the corner, and then you'd buy things there. So I would save all week, and that was kind of my weekly allowance. And so I would spend it on records. And one of the first records I got was because it looked so crazy. I didn't know them, but it was the Clones of Dr. Funkenstein by P-Funk.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, these people look insane. Like, I mean, I knew Kiss, and they looked wild, but these guys kind of look sort of similar in their own way. It's the same costume designer. Later, I found out who did the costumes for Kiss and P-Funk. Yeah, and I listened to that. It's like, oh, there it is. There is the sound that I've been looking for. This is it. And so from there on, I was a funketeer. And
Yeah.
Pretty much all things funk, still love, a lot of rock, huge fan of Led Zeppelin, huge fan of a lot of more funky rock, though, Cream, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, of course, that's the old school, but also like glitter rock, Sweet, Slade, all that,
Yeah, I suppose it must have been a really interesting time to be landing in New York because it was just after the blackouts, right. And also the time where you had that kind of explosion where post blackouts you had the punk movement, you had the disco movement, you had hip hop starting off. Like what was it like landing in that sort of world? And I guess there was probably a lot of poverty around and things like that as well in the city.
Well, okay, I'll tell you kind of a funny story about our arrival in the United States. We arrived on Halloween. Now, we had never heard of Halloween. We didn't know what the hell was going on there. We just see weird-looking people in costume and like people throwing, rotten eggs and, people and just all sort of naughty behavior, and we were like, what the hell is going on in America? It's Brooklyn, and it was well, back then it was Brooklyn Heights it wasn't Brooklyn Heights, Carroll Garden. So this neighborhood was mostly a black neighborhood, lower poor people mostly, and then most of the like corner services and stores and things were owned by Hasidic Jews, right? So, and under the grocery store, that would be, the main grocery store for the black neighborhood would be a synagogue, right? And so it was a really weird mix of poor blacks and Hasidim. I wound up, my first job in the United States was working for a Hasidic man who was very kind to deliver groceries. So that was that. So we were like, what is going on here? We're arriving and, there's a bunch of like, neighborhood guys like drinking 40s, hanging out on the corner, just chilling. They weren't being aggressive or anything, but well, coming from the Soviet Union, then Austria and Italy a little bit less so, but we've seen very few black people until we arrived. Really too. Yeah. We had very little experience with African Americans or Africans or any kind of thing like that. We were very isolated and the culture was very white. And so arriving in a black neighborhood, it was a real culture shock, but it was a beautiful thing actually, because there would be music being played usually, and the guys hanging out on the corner, they would have a blaster with them, and they would be playing some dance stuff, usually some funk or disco. So it was, fairly innocuous. Once the Halloween passed, and the next morning we took a train to Manhattan, and we saw the skyscrapers. I said, "Oh, okay, now we're in America. I see." But because Carroll Garden is all like 1 or 2 story houses, and pretty poor neighborhood. So it's not that beautiful. It's gotten better looking, a lot of money had gone in there and gentrification big time. New York has been gentrified like unbelievably. When we got to New York, it was very much a poor city, even though, Wall Street was there. So you had that, that wealth being generated, but the city itself was deeply in debt. The city services were being cut left and right because the city couldn't afford them. So it was a very, in some ways, very polarizing environment too. Also, during this time, early 80s and late 70s, there was a war going on between the New York City police and the Rastafarians. So a lot of Rastafarians, because of the weed, obviously, so the Rastafarians were quite a lot of time they were armed because they were, the police would get aggressive with them just for no reason at all. They just rough them up. So they were protecting themselves. And so it was pretty hairy, that part of it. And one of my favorite clubs going out at that, around 1990, 80, 81, was a club called Berlin, incidentally. But it was at after hours. And it played mostly reggae. So it opened at like 3 a.m. and it closed in the afternoon sometime, and so it was a really mixed crowd, actually quite eclectic crowd, but a lot of Rastas, and they didn't ask you to check your gun at the floor, at the door, so they were carrying, inside the club. So basically, you got to be careful whose toes you stepped on while you're dancing. But they were there to have a good time and, smoke their weed and feel, get into the music. So it wasn't really that they were being aggressive, but, tempers do fly.
Was it?
Go ahead.
Was it kind of like, I do wonder with things like that, like, because everyone knows that everyone's armed, do you think people are more careful about letting their emotions get the better of them?
Well, there's definitely that, but I don't know if that's enough of an advantage to have legal arms. I'm well, very against that, telling the truth. But, I mean, I can't, count on people staying calm, and New York, in New York, you get very hot summers, and everybody's suffering from the heat. So people have really the temper is afraid. Big traffic jams, temper is afraid. When you have people armed, people react in unpredictable ways. So I don't think it's actually a great idea. But at the time, that was what it was. So
yeah. So from discovering P-Funk, then, did that kind of kick on with you in terms of anything around DJing?
Well, I started collecting records. It started, with that. I would skip food and buy records. And I was very excited about my record collection, and it kept growing. So I started out with, I didn't have two turntables with pitch control. I had bought two turntables, but they didn't have pitch control. So it was just a 33 and 45 thing, so I would make mixtapes, but really just try more like cut through. Just I would make a lot of tapes like that and go around restaurants and try to sell them as like to take background music tapes, and some of them fairly successfully, but some of them not, but I was, also working in the restaurant business. I was managing a restaurant, and that's when at around this time, I met Kier, and met her at Washington Square Park on the Fountain. She was sitting there. We had a mutual friend that was there with her, and we got introduced, and hung out for about, maybe a year before we decided that we were interested a little bit more than just friends. We also, because her friend was a gay lady, and she had a crush on Kier, so she told Kier that I was gay, and she told me that Kier was gay. So right. So we were like, okay, well, just hang out and be friends and all that. And then, it went into the romantic side. And so we then, very shortly after we started going out, we moved in together. Um, First, she moved into. I lived at the time in a one room that I was renting from this old lady, Helen Putnam, and it was by United Nations there in Manhattan, Second Avenue, and but it was one room, so it was a little bit too tight squeeze for the two of us to stay there. So we pretty soon we moved out. And Kier was doing fashion at the time. She was studying at Fashion Institute of Technology, and she was printing fabric. She was a textile designer, basically. And so we found her this apartment in Brooklyn, and she built this huge printing table, maybe about 7-8 meters long. Printing table where she could print a whole bunch of fabric all at once, and it got pretty elaborate. She was doing great stuff, but nobody was paying attention. She was just a young girl, and so nobody was really taking her seriously. Then we had this great opportunity. We were both going out a lot, and I was already doing music. I was in a couple of small-time bands, punk, ska,
right.
All kinds of sounds, some rock too, but and some funky stuff as well. So Kier, she was doing her fashion thing, and we had this opportunity to open up this club that we would go to all the time called Area. They had a competition because they had like all these rooms, the small rooms inside the club that were behind glass. Like you had what do you call it? A storefront. Yeah, they're like a little glass window inside the room, and inside the room they would do art installations. So they would contact different artists, and it was pretty cool club actually. They had a nice sound system too, and a big dance floor. But they had this competition of the best artists. You had to do an installation in the room. We enrolled into the competition, and Kier designed a boudoir, hooker's boudoir. She printed her own wallpaper. She printed her own furniture that she reupholstered. It was she decorated the entire room, and she was the lady of the night, and I was I was her John, so in various incarnations, I did, I'd come in as a sailor, rough her up a bit, and there was a screen in the back where, with a light behind it. So, you could see the silhouette of somebody doing something. And she, we'd go back there, and she would pretend to, do naughty things. I mean, it was all acting, but, it was kind of for the fun of it. And we had a friend who was she was a go-go dancer for the Butthole Surfers. I don't know if you'd heard of the Butthole Surfers.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, so she's a pretty wild lady, and she'd come in there covered in completely green. She was her body and face, everything, and then she'd be naked inside the room and grinding on the window and things like that. So we did this for about a month. Yeah, about 40 days or something like that. Every single day. It's funny. We were driving this car and on the way to Area, and somebody rear-ended us, hit our car. And we were in our drag, if you may. Kier had one of her teeth blacked out. She was wearing a white afro wig, a really cheap 70s dress. And I was dressed as the Hasidic Jew, and so I had the curls and the whole 9 yards, like. And so the cops come and they see us, and they're like looking completely disgusted at us. They're so like, ew, gross. Like, go, get out. So he ran into us. No, just get out of here. Get out of my sight. So anyway, we wound up winning this competition, and it was $5,000, big money back then. Bought more gear, and then we had a psychedelic trip, and pretty soon afterwards, and we decided to try to do music together. We came up with the idea of the name, the concept. We wrote our first 2 songs during this trip, and Dee-Lite was born. Then I contacted my ex-girlfriend, who I was friends with. She played bass and she sang. So she became our backup singer, and so we decided we got a little demo of maybe 6 or 7 songs, and we'd start performing. And we booked our first gig. We didn't tell a soul about it because it was our first gig and we were terrified to be on the stage. And it went okay though. And they asked us again. The club asked us to play again. So the second time we told everybody, of course. But that's how Dee-Lite started. With the live shows, it was really the way that, because we weren't signed, we didn't, we sent out hundreds of demo tapes to labels, and not one, right back anything positive. They were just, what we got a negative letter, so you should forget doing music. Don't ever, just forget it. Find another job. You don't want to be doing that. But, it did not let them deter us. We had, during this time, we wrote a letter to Bootsy Collins, and it was just a fan letter. We sent it to him, and we sent him our demo, and he wrote back, which is, Bootsy is just lovely. And so he wrote back, he's like, yeah, I like the music, you have some potential here. Let me know if you get set up with a label, then I will come and play on your record. And so,
wow.
Yeah.
How come you went to Bootsy rather than George?
Well, to tell the truth, we were a little scared of George.
Right.
No, I mean, I met him later, and he's amazing. I love George. But, at that time, they felt very intimidated. But in any case, we love Bootsy, especially he had this, the name is Bootsy, baby, is this album. And it has this amazing, one side is old slow jams, it's and the other side is more upbeat stuff. But anyway, I love this album. So we really felt connected with Bootsy more because it was also a lot sweeter than P-Funk. Some of the P-Funk stuff can be rough, and if you really listen to the lyrics, if you're really paying attention to what they're saying, some of it it deals with complex issues. Put it this way. And not that Bootsy doesn't, but he's just so much sweeter about the way he interacts with the world, he's got that great energy. Anyway, we might have even written to George, but at the same time, I don't remember. I remember because Bootsy responded. We wrote a lot of letters at that time, trying to get, I kind of have a funny story about Bootsy too, because I met a Bootsy imposter before I met the real Bootsy, right? So this guy is he's a very tall Afro-American guy, and he is he's got he had the glasses, the star glasses that has, Bootsy's signature star glasses. And, I mean, on the albums, you can't really tell what Bootsy totally looks like because, he's wearing glasses, usually a hat. He's got a lot of flashy outfits, so you can't really tell exactly what he looks like. And I'm sure it was intentional. He didn't want to be recognized walking down the street everywhere. So we didn't really know what he looked like. So this guy comes, I'm DJing one night in this club, and he comes and says, and I'm playing like Not Just Knee Deep, right? I'm playing Not Just Knee Deep by P-Punk. And he comes over and says, can you play One Nation Under a Groove after that? I was like, oh, well, okay, I can do it. You know, I love One Nation Under the Groove too. So, and it actually, well, yeah, it sort of mixes. You have to speed one up, you have to slow one down, but they can be mixed together. So I wound up playing that next, and the club owner came over, and the guy walked away. The club owner come over and says, "How did you like the Bootsy, meeting Bootsy?" I was like, "That was Bootsy? Oh my God!" You know. So then I'm finished with the night. I'm packing my stuff, and I was going to drive home to Brooklyn. And this guy is standing outside, like trying to get a taxi. And then, for sometimes at nighttime, for a black man to get a taxi in New York, it can be problematic. At least that time it was, So anyway, I said, hey, where you going? You want to ride somewhere? I'll give you a ride. And so I made him listen to the tape. And, and he knew his stuff. He knew about Bootsy's bass. He knew, he's a musician, so he's a bass player. So he actually was sounded like he knew what he was talking about. And then I let him go, and I gave him my number and everything. And then 2 days later, I'm DJing at the World, and I see him again standing outside. I was like, hey, can you let this guy in? That's Bootsy. So he hung out with the management there, free drinks, drugs, whatever, and then he was with this lady, and she's like, hey, she comes over, I'm DJing, and she comes over, and she's like, hey, have you seen Bootsy? I was like, well, no, I don't know him. Sorry, he's walking around the club somewhere. And she's like, because he had my purse and it had $300 in it. I was like, oh, shoot. I don't know. I'm really sorry. I don't know what he's doing. So then I called up. You left me a number, right? So I called up the number. And I was like, can I speak to Bootsy? And the lady picked up the phone, and who was there? She said, that motherfucker, pardon my French, I got bills here for catering. I got bills here for limousines. I got bills here for, he was like completely using Bootsy's name. He got a grant from Ibanez Guitar for $10,000. He was really working it. And Bootsy, real Bootsy, had heard about it. I talked to him about this later when I met the real deal. And he was like, he had friends of his who found him and brought him to a hotel room where Bootsy was. And he's like, look, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to do anything to you. I just want you to stop. This is not okay what you're doing. You must stop. And the guy continued, and so Bootsy passed it on to FBI eventually, and he's in jail, that guy. But whatever, But this is my first experience of meeting the fake Bootsy. That I met the real one when he came up after the letter, So he came up to play to the on our album. And what an incredible professional! I mean, my God, he was so humble about the way that he, behaved. He really wanted to learn exactly the parts that I wanted him to play. He bootsified it at the end, he made it his own, and that was what we wanted anyway, but he was very careful to learn to get the composition correctly, to get the parts right. And also when touring with him, it was the same thing, where he was super careful about how, he was very true to the original. He didn't try to just change it automatically. And he would always say, was that okay how I changed it this way or that way, and it was always okay. First of all, that man is a human sequencer. He does not make timing mistakes ever. He's on time all the time, super tight. I guess the school of James Brown and P-Funk, really worked that out. He's yeah.
Yeah. Well, so whilst you were kind of working on the album, then had DJing been kind of bubbling and steadily growing? For you?
The DJing absolutely never stopped. I was at that point. By the time the first Dee-Lite album come out, I was working 6 nights a week as a DJ.
Right.
Yeah, so different clubs, the World, Red Zone. I had a gig at a place called Afro Sheen. That's where I met Toa, actually.
Right.
Yeah. I was DJing at this place. And there was a group of maybe 5 or 6 Japanese kids that would come. Trendy Japanese kids would come, and every time I DJ Friday night, they would be there. And one day, one of them, had given me a cassette of his DJing, right? And I was like, okay, thank you. I didn't know him, so I let it lay around for a while, and then one day I was like, oh, let's just see what this is about. I popped it in the cassette player, and it was very similar to what I was doing, but different songs. It wasn't the same, but it was also in the same feel, like in the same ballpark. So I gave him a call and say, wow, it turned out that he does music as well, and he had a sampler. I had a sampler. He had a board, and he had an Atari sequencer. Which is the sequencer I did not have at the time. So everything that I would do, it was sync. It was not even like MIDI, and I would just program the drum machine and record that, and then on an 8-track I would record the Dee-Lite stuff to begin with. But he was like, okay, come over, let's have a jam. And so we started having a jam, and we liked what the chemistry, and because Toa didn't really speak much English when we first started hanging out. He was just arrived from Japan several months ago. Before that, and but we jammed, and we really had a good time, and I liked him, and we thought, okay, let's do some more. And wind up. By that time, Dee-Lite was already performing fairly steadily, like once a month. But we started jamming with Toa, and then I was like, okay, why don't we ask Toa to be a part of the band, too. So we then Toa didn't really have a role to play live, so we were like, okay, why don't you? You're Japanese. Why don't you take Polaroids? And it's like such a stereotype. So he would just take Polaroids and throw daisies. That was another job of his. That he would throw daisies into the crowd. But he was very much involved with the production, especially. Most of World Click was already written by the time that Toa joined, but it wasn't all produced. So Toa had a big hand in making the production.
Did he have like a similar style to you guys? Because that was kind of quite a big thing, wasn't it? The visual element as well.
Well, we were kind of really trying to be very individual about our style. We weren't trying to look similar to each other. Kier had her own thing. I had my own thing, and but me and Kier, of course, we lived together, so we coordinated more naturally than with Toa. But Toa, he was. We were all really into hip hop too. Just let's not forget that, because there was a height of the hip hop beginning of the hip hop culture in New York, and I used to go to block parties in Harlem and the Bronx, and with like Red Alert and Kool Herc DJing, with a lot of early hip hop, Grandmaster Flash. All that kind of thing, and Roxanne Shante, all these kind of people. New York had plus I was working also at Danceteria, and at Danceteria, this is a club in New York, and there you had a lot of hip hop nights too, where, you had like the Sequence, you had the Sugar Hill Gang, you had Spoonie G, you had, some like the Dougie Fresh, these early hip hop, Run DMC. Actually, Run DMC were there quite a lot at Danceteria. And we even filmed one of their videos there, which I appear in for a quick second. I was just a club kid.
Right.
Yeah, but they hired a whole bunch of club kids from Danceteria to be in their video, they liked our look. Yeah, so that was that time. And there at Danceteria, I met another, mentor of mine called Mark Kamens, who was a big DJ at the time. He produced the first Madonna single, actually, Everybody. Yeah, because Madonna, she went from DJ to DJ to, to produce her next single, until she got huge. And that's a whole different story. But anyway, so she was, at that point, she was going out with Mark Kamens, and, everybody would just broke out. But the Danceteria was awesome because you had a lot of live bands that come through there. Pretty much anybody who was in the from rock to funk to disco to rap to industrial, people like Front 242 and Einstein's and Neubauten, this kind of people, and like Lydia Lunch and a lot of really amazing Mark Holloman, a lot of really amazing people have come through Danceteria and performed there. So, and I got a job there as an elevator operator. And it was an elevator, an old school, like 1930s elevator that you had to do by hand. And, well, during the day, I was the elevator operator during the day. And so there was really nobody. Like, once I bring the people to the office, they would stay there. So I had a lot of free time, but I had to hang out in the elevator, right? And be ready for somebody to ring that bell. So I'd bring my guitar into the elevator and my little mini amp, and I would be practicing there. That was it was a good school, like I was saying, because you would see people doing sound checks. You would see like anybody from Sisters of Mercy to Sugar Hill Gang and all kinds of Grandmaster Flash. Different people.
Yeah.
I remember, so many amazing punk shows and hip hop, all kinds of things like that, and we used to hang out there all the time at Danceteria. Also hanging out a lot was next to us were the Beastie Boys, so, and I must say, I used to think that they were really obnoxious. And and we kind of weren't that friendly. Later, we became really friendly, and and actually properly met up and laughed about that Danceteria. But but they, at the time they were just snotty young kids, like they were barely out of high school, and they thought that they were the hot shit, and. At the time, they were called the Young and the Useless, and they were a punk band. My friend Kate was playing drums for them, and then one day they had this record called Cookie Puss. It was their first single, really, and but then they decided that they wanted to be an all boy band, and so they kicked her out. And I was kind of like really thought, what a bunch of wankers, kick out the girl drummer. She was good. She's a good drummer. So she actually started a band in the 90s called Action Jackson that was had quite a bit of success. Yeah, but anyway, so they were there a lot. We had like Karen Finley, who is this performance artist. She was a bartender. We had a lot of really amazing people that were going through there, all kinds of very mixed group. And you had on the fifth floor, you had a cabaret. So you had a whole different group of artists that would be part of that, and we'd see like, for instance, Kitten La Natividad of Russ Meyer, heroine of a couple of Russ Meyer's movies, and his wife, and she's done a strip there, and there would be like John Sex, who was the really cool artist of the time in Manhattan. He's gone now. All kinds of Ann Magnuson. You had Debbie M. You had a lot of really cool New Yorkers that were a part of that scene. And so you had a lot of different scenes. On the first floor was more of a dance and also rock venue, where all the big shows were. The second floor was strictly dance floor. That's where Mark Kamens was playing, and Madonna would be hanging out there all the time. It was a very creative environment, and I learned a lot about performance. And then I also got another job at the Pyramid Club, which was a club that was run and operated by drag queens. And so there I learned a whole lot about showmanship and about what just comedy, fun, but also real talent. So that was a great time and a great learning experience for me. And we used to do a festival called Wigstock, and the Dee-Lite had done some of our early shows for that, and it were kind of a real fixture in the whole pyramids scene.
Mm.
That was a very interesting. So there's a lot of different scenes going on in New York. That's what we loved about New York, and Dee-Lite was a direct result of that, because house music was starting to go really strong, and at the same time we were into funk. So we tried to bridge the gap, like between house and funk, and that was the Dee-Lite sound, pretty much.
How did you guys get signed?
Well, it was a really. We were doing regular shows, like once a month we would do a show. We would have usually, at least from 800 to 1,500 people that would be showing up at every show. And we were building, and one of the shows, a writer from Billboard magazine had come to by accident, but he really liked the band, and then he wrote an article in Billboard about us. And then he had come around once more and asked us if we would like him to help manage the band. And he had contacts with several labels. We had a mini bidding war for Dee-Lite. It was kind of fun. All these labels were interested. Geffen flew us to Los Angeles. We didn't sign with them, but it was anyway. They were trying. All these labels were trying to impress us, like. And then Elektra finally, we decided to go with Elektra because our A&R person, she signed Iggy Pop before, and she also signed Bjork. And so we thought, okay, well, if these people are open enough to deal with these people, then they might be open enough to deal with Dee-Lite, because we didn't really want to compromise much on what our sound or what our look is going to be.
Yeah, who was the A&R person?
Nancy Jeffries.
Right.
She used to work at Virgin, where she signed Iggy, and she signed a couple more really, like Ziggy Marley, a couple more really cool artists. And then she moved to Elektra, and then we were like her first signing. No, Bjork was her first signing. Sorry, and then we were next.
Yeah. So when the album was getting ready to be released, did anyone have a feeling about how big Grooves in the Heart would become?
Oh, are you kidding? They didn't even want to release it. Elektra didn't think that Grooves in the Heart would go anywhere. They thought they didn't like the vocal. They didn't think the track had really any traction on it, but they let us do it. And we also, Tova had a good friend who became our friend too, was Hiroyuki Nakano. He directed the video. He'd come over and he'd shot Dee-Lite before, like a couple of times. And then we thought, okay, let's ask him to do the video, and Elektra had never heard of him. They were like, who? What you want to do? Because back then it was like a big budget, so they and it's the budget we had to pay back. It's not, it was an advance, part of the advance. So they were like, they didn't believe in the project to begin with, but then all of a sudden it started happening, and part of that was that we released "What Is Love" as a white label before we released "Groovin' in the Heart," and it became kind of an underground dance hit. And Junior Vasquez at the Sound Factory started playing it quite a lot, and so that got us noticed, kind of thing. I remember the very first time I had just had it on a DAT, right? What Is Love? And I was DJing at Red Zone. It's a big dance floor, maybe 1,500 people. And I dropped it, and it was very strange reaction. And I dropped it. Nobody left the dance floor. They all just stood there. And like they didn't know, because it was a lot slower than all the other music that I was playing. You got your 120 plus BPM, with your house stuff. And all of a sudden, What Is Love is 113, 114. It's a lot slower, and you can't, with the DAT, you can't mix it. It didn't have pitch control.
Yeah.
So you couldn't speed it up. So you had to stop the house music and then play What Is Love. And they were just mesmerized the first time. Nobody danced. Nobody moved from the dance floor. They were like, what the hell are we hearing now? But they were interested. And then later that same night, I played it again. And then this time the reaction was amazing. We really had people going crazy over it. And so then it crossed over to Sound Factory, and other clubs started really hitting it. And then we released Groovers in a Heart with the video. And the video really helped sell it to bring it to another level.
Did it blow up immediately, or was there a bit of time for it to bubble up?
Well, a couple of weeks after it had been released, I was at the grocery store, and I was in line, with my vegetables, and all of a sudden it came on the radio in the grocery store, and the cashier lady, she started going, "Oh shit, that's my jam, that's my jam," and she started dancing in the at the cashier station, and I thought, maybe this could really cross over, and then you would hear it, going out of Jeeps, passing on our street a lot, and then people found out, because we lived, me and Kier lived on St. Mark's Place, which is a very busy street in downtown Manhattan. So people found out where we lived, and then there would be crowds of people like waiting in front of in front of our apartment, like to, get a glimpse or get an autograph or something, And so we actually had an expression for that: "The groovy attack, run."
How did you get the connection with Q-Tip? Was that through Toa?
Yeah, it was. Toba had done some work on the Tribe Called Quest and Jungle Brothers albums. And so Q-Tip, to reciprocate for the work that Toba had done on Tribe Called Quest album, he'd come over. And it was kind of funny because we thought he's coming by the studio to pick up the tape and take it home and, write and whatever, and then come back and record it. And he's like, no, man, let me just listen to it for a little while, So give me about 15 minutes or so, let me jot down some lyrics. And we're like, okay, And so we did it, and then he was like, "Okay, I'm ready," So and just put it up, and he did two takes, and the first take was the take that we know, and the second take was backgrounds. So he just doubled on some words and some phrases, and that was that. We were done. He was done another 20 minutes. He was done.
Wow.
It was such a professional. It was really amazing that you just come up right on the spot. Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, and I suppose you've got the visual element that speaks to people in a certain way. You've got the Bootsy in there that speaks to him in a certain way. You've got Q-Tip that speaks to him in a certain way. It's a track that kind of touches a lot of people.
Yeah, it's funny. Bootsy, he was like talking to me. So Dee, you think you might want to have some horns on your record? I was like, well, who do you have in mind, Bootsy? And he's like, well, I got these friends of mine, like these Fred Wesley and Maceo Parker. And at that point, I was like, yes, bring them in, please.
Oh, so they're on it as well?
Yeah, they're on the first two Dee-Lite albums, yeah.
Right, I didn't realise.
Actually, on all three, because we used samples of them on the third one.
Yeah,
that we recorded. So, yeah. And so we got Fred and Maceo, and then Maceo was even in the video, the Dee-Lite video. But it's very funny because those two, they haven't played together in a long time. They used to play for 20 years with James Brown and P-Funk, but then they did their own thing for a little while, and they lived in different parts of the country. So they hadn't played in 5 years together, and they come together and they start playing like they never left. It's just so long together. They know exactly where it was. Maceo was improvising, and Fred knows exactly where he's going and can like harmonize with his improvising. It blew my mind. I'd never seen anything like it. Yeah. But Bootsy is like, oh, you know what? They're not playing so good. Let me see what I can do about it. And that would sound great to me. I don't know, Bootsy. He's like, yeah, just wait. So he pulls out his record at the time, and it was a 12-inch. I forget the actual track name, but it had on the back cover of it was a picture of a woman's behind, taking up the entire, 12 inches of it. And so he holds it up to the vocal booth, so in the window, and they perk up, like they start playing much, much harder. It was hilarious. But, but really, when they came up to do 2 songs, and they wound up doing 8, and it was amazing. They were just such pros. And when they first come, like Fred, Wesley, come over and give everybody a hug, give everybody a smile. Really super friendly guy. Maceo came in cold as ice. He just come in his suit and tie, very, very cold, very formal. And we're like, okay, he's Maceo. What are you gonna do? So. We let him get into the music, and when he came out of the booth, he was all smiles and hugs and everything else. He just was, harder to break through the ice. He just thought, oh, these white folk doing our, taking our funk sound, But that was not. He at the end he was really came around and it was lovely, So
it's crazy that you guys on your first album just had something that made everyone believe in it so much.
Yeah, right. No, we were very lucky for sure. And especially with Bootsy, that was the thing that really, because he brought in the horns then, and I mean, but we were lucky also with the Q-Tip agreeing to appear, and a lot of great artists helped. And great engineering, from Mike Rogers, rather. He also played drums on a couple of the tracks.
Right. Because something else I was going to mention as well is the arrangement.
Oh, the arrangement. That was my responsibility. A lot of that, because many hours in the studio.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, I've heard Groove Is In My Heart a lot more than like the albums. I've listened more to the albums recently since sort of talking to you, and just kind of it's really interesting, like understanding what you were doing and how much cross-pollination there is and stuff like that and where everything comes from. But I think with dance music and stuff, like just generally, I think in arrangement's kind of like an underappreciated part of things.
It's key. You know, the arrangement is like half the battle, basically, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sure, you know, it's easy to come up. Well, I mean, yeah, not for some people, but it's for me, it's easy to come up with parts. It's not a big deal. But how to make it into a coherent picture? How to make them into so they don't step on each other? So they, you know, they tell a story. You know, that's arrangement.
Yeah, yeah. Did that arrangement experience? And kind of, was that something that you learned in your early years training, like with the conservatory students?
Well, you know, certainly musical composition, you know, for sure. Arrangement, I mean, I've apprenticed in a couple of studios. I've worked with on sessions with artists and seen, you know, how it's done a bit. So that was inspiring. But I think I do have a little bit of a talent for the arrangement part of it. You know, that's definitely my strength. But yeah.
Because like it really keeps the energy in, certainly like with Grooves in the Heart, like the middle eight. You know, like a lot of dance music doesn't really have that sort of middle eight in the structure, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, being a DJ really helps, you know, with that.
Yeah.
You know, you need to have your highs and lows. You know, you need to have your break. You know, your break. You know, you need to have your build up again. You know, that's just that's house music. You know.
Yeah. Did touring come quite quickly after the first album then?
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, you have to remember, we were playing like once a month. So touring, you know, it just was a natural progression, you know, from that. And then we got this gig at Rock in Rio in front of 300,000 people. And, so it was a little bit unnerving, you know, but... And it's a festival situation, so you don't really get a sound check. You know, you just have to jump on in there, and in the first song or two, the sound man kind of figures out the mix, basically. I mean, so it was a little bit, it was a lot unnerving.
Did when you were putting the album together, were you thinking at the time about how you could perform it live?
Well, I mean, look, the album was produced by three people, you know, so we were, you know, we always had to play with a backup tape, you know, because we couldn't play all the parts. So then, you know, we would need a live band to be able to play the whole thing live, and that's exactly what we decided to do. That we would get a live band and we would play all of it live, or and that's with Bootsy, and a lot of the members of Bootsy's rubber band had come on tour as our musicians, and other people as well. It wasn't just Bootsy's rubber band, but yeah. We had auditions. It took a while to get the band together, but we did it. And then we went to Cincinnati, Ohio, to rehearse. We had 2 weeks of rehearsal with the band, and then it was on. Then we had to go on tour. It was a little. It was a lot. Because our first real gig with the band was in front of 300,000 people.
Yeah. So when you went on tour, because did you go on tour supporting Bootsy?
Well, at first we no, we never really opened. Well, we had a couple of festivals we played together with other people, but we tried to do our own thing most of the time.
Right.
And,
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. The Dee-Lite stuff started kind of blowing up, and then we could, yeah. Well, afford is hardly the right word because we were just wound up putting all the money that we made back into the band.
Yeah. Yeah.
Into the tour. At the end, we walked away. It was the money that I made from the tour is I made by selling my DJ mix cassettes. On the side, like the side that I made, like I don't know, 10 or 20 grand, something in between, from just selling cassettes.
Right. And
it's pretty cool.
And like, what impact did it have on your DJ career?
Well, I mean, people, we had a lot more people wanting to book me.
But I guess you would have had to like stop doing residencies because of all the commitments from the band, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I couldn't, for a year, I couldn't do residency. I would usually DJ at an after-hour party after the show.
Right.
So I did thousands of those, do it throughout the next couple of years. And so and then when I, in between tours, I would be DJing, and that's kind of how it was.
Yeah. Was there much pressure involved when you did the second album?
Well, after the first album, we were introduced to the label's boss, this guy Bob Krasnow. He was the president of Elektra, and he said the meeting lasted about maybe 3 minutes altogether, but he said, well, you got your you got your whole life to make your first album, and then you have a year to make your second. So we're not expecting much from your second. That's what he said to us.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay. Well, it's nice to know where we stand. But no, he's like, oh yeah, Andy Warhol said everybody's gonna have their 15 minutes. This is the first meeting. They're like, oh, okie dokie. And then I asked him, I think I pissed him off even more by asking him, because I'm a big fan of Love, the band Love, and Arthur Lee. Yeah, and so I was on one of the first signings of Elektra. And so I asked, so Arthur Lee. And then he didn't say anything positive. He said some really negative things. I'm not going to repeat that. But it turns out later that I heard that actually Jimi Hendrix collaborated with Arthur Lee on an album, and they recorded an album's worth of material together that Bob Krasnow, because his personal, he didn't like Arthur Lee. They had a big, they hated one another. So he holds it in his vault, and he never released it because he hated Arthur Lee. So this is the kind of thing. So I now, looking back at that, I understand what kind of a jerk, I was talking to later. But, that time it felt hurtful to hear that. But, no matter. With the first album, we did most of it at home, right? And then we brought our home recordings into the studio and, put it on tape and so forth. The second album, we did mostly in the studio. And which was kind of wasteful way of doing it, but we thought we were hot shit, and at that point, and we wanted to try a different approach, and while some of my favorite Dee-Lite songs are on the second album, to me it's our weakest album overall. I like Infinity Within a lot, and I like the way it looked, and I like most of the songs on it, but looking back at it, it is definitely my least favorite of the Dee-Lite 3 album. But and then for the Dewdrops in the Garden, for the third album, we wanted to again do a complete opposite of that, and then get back to doing things at home, and really working things out. And a lot of it was even mixed at home. We didn't even bring it to a big studio.
Right.
Yeah, so that was a big difference.
Because in my notes, one of the things I read, it used the words. Where is it down here? Sorry. It referred to you getting minimal label support for the third album.
Yeah, they didn't believe in us.
Did they give you less of an advance then?
The what?
Did they give you a smaller advance, like less marketing support and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there was all that, but it wasn't. We could still do it. There was a way to do it, but we didn't want to do it in the studio and spending the big bucks. It was really kind of a statement that we wanted to make it feel more homey, more real, more underground, even, if you may. And that's what the Dewdrops was all about. And, it stands the test of time at the end of the day. I listened to that the other day and thought, oh, wow, that still sounds really good. I'm really happy about that album.
It's got a bit of a sound in it, a bit like some of the Diggable Planets stuff.
Okay, well, we were friendly at the time.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. I like that first Diggable Planets album quite a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a sound that's it's aged pretty well.
Yeah.
I think that's
it's just very real, it's very, yeah. There was not fronting, not trying to be something else. Just, yeah. Keeping it real.
So one question that just comes a little bit kind of in from the side, if you like. And this was the first thing I sort of commented on something on Instagram of yours, was that I've read certainly in Jumping Jack Frost's book, and I think somewhere else, about conversations with, it might have been with Kia, about the internet, and about, probably from this sort of mid-90s time, about the internet and about how, you should be looking at how this thing's going to be used, it's going to be big, it's going to change everything. Were you guys kind of really up on sort of technology and the possibilities of it?
Well, I mean, I've been reading sci-fi books my most of my adult life. I would consider myself a futurist. Whatever that could mean to many things to many people. But I was always interested in technology and how it could be used for art, and then what you could how you could take it to a whole other level. Still there, now with this AI, very mixed feeling there, but there's but at the same time, I think that if we use it as a tool to get our ideas across, it could work out fine. If we can't let it take over, we still have to be, us. You want the human input. That's very important. That's what actually makes it valuable more. But it certainly looks very slick. And that could be, if you know how to get your ideas across using that, then that could be helpful. Of course, it can also kill us all. Is that small matter? Yeah, it's a very mixed bag with AI, and now we're really entering the age of singularity, where things are accelerating quite a lot with technology, and you're gonna get more. I mean, you have so much more information out there, disinformation, information, fake, real, all mixed up, and just. And the fake has gotten to be so good that you can't really tell it apart from real.
Yeah.
And that's it's a little bit of a scary situation, but it's probably gonna be the greatest upheaval of humanity, and we're like gonna live through it in the next 5-10 years. We're gonna see it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and try to keep positive. But it is, it's a lot.
Yeah. So just going back to your sort of timeline, then, After the third album, what was it that led to you guys disbanding?
Well, me and Kier were a couple. We broke up as a couple. And, then Kier decided that she wanted to move to London. And she did for a number of years. And I was doing my own thing. She was doing my thing. I started working with Cruz, after that. And was very lucky to have been able to work with her. But Kier did her own thing, and she was making drum and bass, which was very cool. Actually, I listened to some of it, and it was pretty amazing. But we weren't getting along really that much. We were a couple breaking up, and remember that shit you said in February?
Yeah, it's not going to help.
No,
much,
actually, I don't. But I certainly didn't mean it. Yeah, but anyway, so that was that. And Toa, after when we signed the deal for World Click, we just signed it. We were at Elektra, and we were in a cab going back, and Toa says, "Oh, I think I'm gonna move to Japan next year." I said, "But Toa, we just signed a 7-album deal with Elektra. You can't you move to Japan next year. We got all these albums to do." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then he did move to Japan next year. So, then it was, much more difficult to continue working together permanently. And he did on the third album. He did do one of the songs, "Call Me." He did, and he did a great job on that. But he was, starting his own career and doing other things. And me and Kier were kind of getting into the rave scene at the time, and there was a club called NASA that I was DJing quite a lot often there, and it was playing mostly drum and bass, but also techno, and so it was a new sound, and I was very excited about it, and there I met DJ Ani, who became a third member of Dee-Lite. With Toa, Toa was still kind of involved, but he didn't go on tour.
Right.
Toa, he didn't like to go on tour, and so Ani came about, and we started working together, and quite prolifically, and we made Dewdrops in the Garden. Ani was a very essential part of Dewdrops in the Garden.
Yeah. So after you guys split, then what was the impact on DJing? Did you kind of throw yourself a lot more back into that as a full time?
Yeah, DJing. I started touring around the world DJing. I went to South America. I went to Asia. I went to UK, to wherever, Canada, a lot of places, Australia. And I played some high profile gigs like the Love Parade in Berlin, and big things, small things, all kinds of things, Mayday, all kinds of things.
Yeah, and you won Ibiza DJ of the Year in 1998, I found.
That was kind of a funny thing, because I don't consider myself a techno DJ, but I like some techno, so they asked me, this Privilege is a huge club in Ibiza. They asked me to play a techno set because I was playing with Sven Väth. And I thought, okay, well, that could be fun to just do a really, really hard techno, techno sound. And so I did, he only had like an hour and a half or something, to play. So I did a very, very hard techno thing. And Ibiza, they went absolutely crazy for it. And it was, 10,000 Englishmen mostly. Well, privilege. Not men, just English people. Because I think you had all these deals where you get, your ticket to privilege and amnesia and another club, and included with your plane ticket and your hotel. It was like a package deal that you would get. It was very popular for the UK ravers. They would go to Ibiza, fall asleep on the beach and with their sunglasses on, and then have raccoon eyes. That was typical. And so that was kind of a funny scene. And I had a good friend who was living there and running a label of Ibiza, so I was there quite often for a while. And so then, they gave me this award at Pasha, right? That's where the awards were given. Yeah, so it's funny. But I was pretty happy about it. It's a cool thing, but it was kind of hilarious, because I'm not really a techno DJ, but it was the best techno DJ of the world.
And that's when you're playing with someone like Sven Väth as well, who was at the top of his game, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's a pretty serious accolade, with those sort of clubs that you're talking about as well.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, Sven is kind of an old friend. He's a cool guy. We met in New York and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it through this sort of era that you kind of connected with Berlin, or was that quite a bit later?
No, I mean, it was, maybe a little bit later, but in 98, 99, that's when I started going to Berlin quite often. And I thought, well, you know what? I could live in this city. This is a cool city, and I could get into it. I could, and I had, there's a lot of clubbing, a lot of work. That's possibilities. So, and a big infrastructure for dance music, for labels, so forth. So it made and New York was going through the opposite of thing. We had this mayor Giuliani. Maybe you've heard of him. He's that guy. But he was, he got elected by promising a crackdown on organized crime. Now, organized crime always had a tax write-off, and that was the clubs. Because you don't get a receipt at the door, you don't get a receipt at the bar. You can say I've made so much or so much, and nobody can really check it. Because you have a clicker, a guy who's with a clicker standing up front to know exactly how much, how many people you're letting in. And you have a clicker at the bar. But, the authorities don't know. So that was a very obvious tax write-off for the mob. And so he went, but that was not their real business, that was just what they used to launder some of the money. And so he went after the clubs because it was the easiest thing, and he could pretend that he's going after the mob. And basically devastated New York nightlife, closed so many clubs. You also, in New York, you have there's the liquor commission where you need your liquor license, and then there's the dance commission where you need your dance license. And these processes can be very corrupt and wear at the time, so it took, it could take a couple of years to get your dance license if you didn't have the right connections, and then you would have to be open and illegal, running your club illegally while you're waiting for the dance license. It's a very, very corrupt process. But he wound up running getting down the number of clubs from almost 100 that we had in New York down to 5. So it was only 5 survivors.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, well, it's time for me to look for greener pastures, if you may. Berlin was wide open, and hundreds of clubs, parties, love parade, all kinds of things going on, celebrating dance culture. And I used to play at Tresor fairly often, in Berlin. So I thought, okay, it's time to move on. and I did. And so I've been here for quite a long time, 19 years. So, yeah.
Amazing. And it was at that, I mean, I was speaking to you off camera, wasn't I, about when my friend moved there. And I know like he moved late 2000s, and it was quite a cheap place to live at that point as well.
That's right. That's right.
Especially for being a capital city full of culture.
It's still, comparatively to London or Paris or New York, it's still much cheaper, but maybe 20% cheaper than all those cities. Of course, you do not get the kind of cultural diversity that London or New York or even Paris has. You know, you just don't. It's very diverse culturally too, Berlin. Don't get me wrong, but it's just not to the point that New York or London is. You know.
Yeah.
That's just historical reasons and all that.
Yeah.
And then I was working on remixing. I did some remixes for Chaka Khan. I did some remixes for Ziggy Marley. I've done a couple of other things for artists, and still working on my own stuff. And then one day, my friend Eric D. Clark from Whirlpool Productions, he goes, "Hey, D, you really should listen to this lady and do a remix for her." I was like, well, who do you have in mind? And he's like, well, this girl, Jessie Evans. And I knew who she was because I had an album of hers from years before, and I liked it. And so I was like, well, send me the music and send me the her vocals, and let me see if I'm interested. So I listened to it, I loved it, and it came very quickly. Usually it's 1 to 2 weeks for a good remix to take shape, but this came in 2 days. It was done, and it was really felt really strong. And I sent it back and started a conversation with Jessie, and she's like about talking about music. I said, well, what do you like to sing to? And she said, well, I love reggae and dub, and that's kind of really the direction where I want to go. And it just so happened that during the years before, in around 2015 or 2012, I was working with another friend, and we made like 18 or so dub tracks. We were looking for a correct singer. Nothing happened. We couldn't find anybody really worthwhile that we were happy with. So, and then my friend stopped doing music, went into music journalism, and he said, "Oh, just do whatever you want with these tracks. Forget about it. I got to provide for my family. I understand that." And so I sent Jessie these tracks. They were laying on my computer gathering bits. And she claimed every one of them, and she plays the sax. So she one by one, like every couple of days, she sent me one of the songs, and it was just amazing. I mean, it was pandemic time, so the kids, didn't have school. They were at home, and my kid was at home. She was living in Brazil at this time. She was living in Ubatuba in Brazil, and and so. But I was like, who is this person? How does she have this kind of work ethic that she can, record? I mean, like 6 or 7 tracks of sax, and then 5 or 6 tracks of vocals. So wow. When does she have the time? She's caring for 2 young kids. When does she have the time to even do this? And how is she doing it? And one after the other, and before you know it, we had at least an album's worth of material, and we'd never met. At that point, we said, okay, after we had about an album's worth of material, let's have a video session to talk each other on video, to each other on video. So then, we started getting writing these long emails to each other, starting getting closer and closer, and really got close over our music. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Ubatuba in Brazil and meet who I'm working with, because she's really doing something great here. So I went, and it went really well. And before you know it, we were very close and in love. And then I went back to Germany. She stayed in Ubatuba. But 6 months later, she decided she was going to move to Europe to do Nauti Siren with me. And so she came to Germany with her daughters, my daughters now, and pretty much a couple of months after that, we got married, and here we are with Nauti Siren, and we have about 5 albums worth of material with Nauti Siren, so we got a lot of music to release.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so the first one, Rising, is now out on Bandcamp, and soon to be out on all the platforms.
Yeah, when this comes out, it'll either be out on all platforms, or that'll be imminent. So if people head to your Instagram, probably
they could
find
see
out
the preview of some of the tracks. They can also, the singles are out on all the platforms. So we have 5 now. 5 singles and some remixes as well on all the platforms, so people can get those already, and they can go to Bandcamp if they're not too lazy, and get a copy of the album Rising on Bandcamp.
Yeah, and it's spelt Nauti as in Nauti Siren, isn't
Correct, like nautical.
Ah, right, yeah. It's Nauti and then Siren Siren.
Yeah, correct. That's it.
That's amazing. So, yeah, to have had kind of 2 romantic partnerships that have also been music partnerships is pretty interesting.
Well, with Jessie, it really started with the music. With Care, it started with not with the music. It just started with the love, and then it evolved to music. With Jessie, started with the music, and then evolved into love. So it's a different thing.
Yeah, and you guys have got the studio as well, haven't you? Which you're looking to expand.
Yeah, well, I have my studio, and now we have more space. So we're building a studio in the basement of our building, and for the drum set, for the percussion, for the bass and the guitar and the keyboards and all that is going to be down there. But it's a bit of a slow process. We're working on it. Couple months, then we'll be going.
And how much DJing are you doing at the moment? Are you still very active?
Occasionally I do. I DJed recently at Paloma Bar here. I have a couple of festivals lined up closer to the summer. For me now, I've started a new series kind of that I'm doing. It's called Life of a Party, and there's a couple of examples on my Instagram page. But basically, I pick one track from a year, and I started with 1970. Right now, I'm at 1980. Actually, just did the 1980. So I pick one track from every year to celebrate each year with just one track that I pick. But I want to really take it next to a DJ set where I play, I go through the evolution of the dance music. I play one track from every year. And that's a pretty long DJ set, 55 years. But, I'll make it work.
Amazing. I'll post it. What is your Instagram handle?
It's Super DJ Dmitry.
And it's
it's SUPER DJ Dmitry DMITRY.
Amazing. Just one more stray question. I've just got the World Clique credits on my screen, or another bit of my screen. I just noticed that Bob Power did some of the engineering on that. Were you around him doing that, and what was that experience like?
He mastering, right? You're talking about mastering.
I've just got it. It just says additional engineering on here.
Oh yeah.
But
On World Click.
This is on Discogs, so whether it's accurate or not, maybe it does mean.
Okay, yeah. No, I mean he did some of the mastering. I mean he doesn't usually let people hang out in the studio while he does his magic, but he made an exception for us, and he let us see him in action. And what an amazing man! You know, you could say give him an engineering credit, because really what he did was nothing short of magic to make your record sound great. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't been in touch, so I don't know if he's still around. I hope so. You know, but he was an older guy then. Not sure.
Yeah. He's I've heard him on a few podcasts and things, and just the way he talks is amazing.
So he's still around. Okay.
I believe so, yeah. I've heard him on things in the past couple of years anyway. But yeah, phenomenal. Dmitry, thank you so much for your time today. There's some wonderful stories that you shared, and I really appreciate you just being like, yeah, I'll do this, and just coming on and sharing all this with us.
Right. Well, I appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure. And would you like me to send you the Nauti Siren album, or
yeah, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I could do that. I'll send you the MP3 version, but yeah,
brilliant,
cool.
All right, well, I'll let you get back to your weekend, and it's been really nice doing it on a Sunday afternoon as well. What a nice time to have a chat.
All right,
great stuff. Thanks ever so much for everything.
All right,
cheers.
Have a good one.